Simulated circuit breaker function and wiring. Contents. 1. The function of simulated circuit breaker. 2. The use of simulated circuit breakers. 3. The wiring of simulated circuit breakers. 4. Example of the simulated circuit breaker test. 1. The function of simulated circuit breaker. The simulated circuit breaker is used in conjunction with the tester and the protection device to replace the actual circuit breaker, and can carry out the whole group transmission test of the protection device tripping and closing the circuit breaker. 2. The use of simulated circuit breakers. 1. Operation panel. 2. Connect to the 220V AC working power supply. Close the power switch. After a few seconds, the circuit breaker simulation device is in the trip state. The three-phase trip position light, green light, on the panel is on, and there is an alarm sound. 3. Manual closing and tripping. Manual closing and manual tripping buttons are used by testers to simulate the function of the circuit breaker control switch to perform manual closing and manual tripping operations of the circuit breaker. Press the manual closing button to close the simulated circuit breaker, with the three-phase closing position light, red light, on. Press the manual tripping button to break the simulated circuit breaker, with the three-phase trip position light, green light, on. The input terminal of the trip and close signal is equivalent to the trip and close coil circuit of the actual circuit breaker. In practical application, it replaces the actual circuit breaker to connect with the trip and close outlet of the protection device or control circuit. When pressing the button with lighted breaker failure, the red light of breaker failure flashes. The simulated circuit breaker is in failure state. Add the trip and close current. The simulated circuit breaker does not act. After a delay of 2s, the trip and close current is automatically cut off. After another 20s delay, the trip and close circuit is automatically reconnected. The output connector reflects the action state of the simulated circuit breaker, which can be connected to the input terminal of the protection device or tester according to the test needs. (3) The wiring of simulated circuit breakers. (3) Simulated circuit breaker cooperates with test instrument and protection device for the whole transmission test wiring diagram. 4. Example of the simulated circuit breaker test. Use PSS01B circuit breaker simulation device to test the whole set of distance protection test and failure protection of CFONG CSL101B. The circuit terminal numbers are the terminal numbers on the rear panel of the CSL101B protection device. Test procedure. Step 1. The circuit breaker trip and closing control wiring of the primary equipment is withdrawn from the control loop and connected to the simulated circuit breaker. Step 2. Test wiring. Step 3. Set the tripping and closing time of the simulated circuit breaker and the current value of the tripping and closing coil, according to the tripping and closing time of the primary equipment circuit breaker and the current value of the tripping and closing coil. Step 4. Close the simulated circuit breaker with the control switch in the circuit, or the manual closing button of the simulated circuit breaker. Step 5. The whole set of tests is carried out by adding the fault quantity. Step 6. Press the failure button of the simulated circuit breaker. Add the fault amount to test the failure protection. Thank you for watching it.